Hello students, welcome to PNYC. So now let us see this very important chapter from your syllabi, that is animal classification in great detail. So this is a very lengthy chapter. You might feel that it is a humongous amount of data. How will you analyze and assimilate so much of information? But don't worry. For your ease, we have put out presentations over here, and I'm sure you will enjoy this journey throughout. So I have put out all the important points that are necessary for you to study different phyla or classes of animals, and with this your memorizing abilities will be enhanced, or rather it will be easier for you to remember rather than completely textual information. So now with this note, let us come to the need for animal classification. Now this chapter has got three major points. It talks about the history of animal classification, then the novel or the new method of classification of animals, and finally we have to study and classify the kingdom Animalia, which includes us and also the other fauna or the other living creatures that we see around. So now what is the need? Why do you need to classify animals? Now this has been given as a very beautiful bulleted list in your textbook. Let us see how to go about it. So the first one is study of animals becomes convenient. Obviously, for very obvious reasons, you need to categorize something, right? In order to compare, even when you study mathematics or any other subject, you need to group your variables, right? You need to group data. Why do we need to do this? Because unless and until you have a commonality between them or some kind of similarity, it is very difficult for you to compare. I cannot compare an ostrich with an elephant, right? Though they are kingdom Animalia, one is from apes, one is a mammal. So we need to classify them. Then, whenever you study certain characteristic organisms or a representative species, it gives you an idea of the entire genus. That is what has been talked about in the second point, which is study of few animals from a group helps to understand about the entire animal group. Fine, justified. Then it also gives you an idea about the animal evolution. Imagine if we did not have this in place, I would be comparing bats with birds, right? But those are not wings, which we'll be studying when we, study this mammalia class or order. And because not only is evolution important, but also it helps to identify the animals with great accuracy. What do I mean by accuracy? Accuracy is not how correctly you are saying a crow is crow. It means that if you are comparing two very similar or closely related species, like say a crow and raven, there are possibilities that you might get confused, right? Because they are very closely related species. So then, or if you take certain classes of finches, they come with so minor variations that it is very difficult to classify. So hence again, this need is re-endorsed. We need to classify them. It also helps us to understand the relationships of animals with the other living beings. Basically, this is the food web, the habitat, the ecosystem that they live in. And hence, this point has been further continued towards points 6 and 7, which talk about the ecology as a whole. So now, without wasting much time, let us come to the first topic, that is your history of animal classification. Who began it? Why was it needed? So first was the artificial method of classification. Now this name is slightly contradictory. You might feel artificial means something related to AI or it must have come recently, but that's not the case. AI means because it was very superficial, it was termed as artificial system of classification, which was first begun by Aristotle, right? So what did he do? He did classify animals depending on external features like body size, their habits, and the habitats that they live in. So after this, this was also proposed by other scientists like Theophrastus, Pliny, John Ray, and Linnaeus. So Linnaeus is a revolutionary or a pioneer in terms of animal classification. So he was the one who classified a great number of species, and hence, as an honor, whenever we write the name of an animal according to the binomial nomenclature, we usually suffix it with lin, Lin. So that stands for Carl Linnaeus. So after this came the natural system of classification. Now, what does the natural system of classification state? So, this was based on various criteria like body organization, types of cells, your chromosomes, your biochemical makeup, your physiology, whatnot. So, this was more realistic, right? It was more, conforming towards the truth of who an organism is. in terms of its identity. And then there were also other methods of classification which were based on evolution given by Dobzhansky and Mayer. So they completely relied on evolution as a classification pathway. And recently, Carl Woese has also given important contributions in terms of animal classification. So this is about the history of animal classification. Now let us see what were the traditional methods in historical times. So initially there were only two major groups like chordates and non-chordates. So what is meant by chordates and non-chordates? Though this method is still imbibed into the present natural method of classification of the new method because it is important. So non-chordates are animals in which the notochord is absent. Hence the name non-chordates. Notochord is absent, right? And pharyngeal gills are present. So they are present for respiration. Most of them are aquatic forms. Very rarely you will find that they are terrestrial or rather nil. So nerve cord, if present only in certain species, is ventral in position and it is solid and paired, right? Heart, if present, is on the dorsal side. So this is slightly a similar feature which bears similarity to chordates as well. Now let us see what are chordates. So chordates, their body plan is supported by a notochord. We humans, mammals have a spine. Similarly, chordates do have a notochord, right? Pharyngeal gills and lungs are present for respiration. Then the nerve cord is present on the dorsal side, right? And it's hollow, which is a characteristic feature of chordates. Then the heart is present on the ventral side of the body. Okay, so if imagine if I lie down with my belly on the floor, this will be my ventral side, that is near the surface of the earth or the one that is touching the earth, and my back and my spine will be the dorsal side. So always remember, this is ventral, this is dorsal. So here, as you can see in chordates, you can see the notochord present on the the dorsal side, the nerve cord which is also paired along with it. You have certain muscles which are associated with this notochord, the tail fin, the anus, gill slits, and mouth, which is essential for feeding. So the heart also is present somewhere. In very lower forms, the heart exactly doesn't exist as a well-developed organ, but you have a hemolymph or you have a circulatory system which functions very similar to the heart. So now next let us see how has this been classified according to the new method of classification. So here you see kingdom Animalia, a major kingdom of animals. This has been classified into two subkingdoms or two subtypes, that is chordates and non-chordates. So let us see what are non-chordates first. So all of these phyla have been given to you in some details with a little bit of briefings about them along with their representative organisms, which makes you easy to learn and understand. So this non-chordates has got 10 phyla, right? So singular phylum, plural phyla. So 10 phyla which include protozoa, anything from single unicellular organisms up till multicellular organisms such as hemichordata. Right? I won't be putting out all of them right now because we are going to see them in details in the following slides. Then the subkingdom, that is chordates, has the further phylum known as chordata, and this phylum has got subphyla again. So what are they? They are Urochordata, Cephalochordata, and Vertebrata. So Vertebrata is further divided into 6 classes, as I was telling you then. So what are these 6 classes? Cyclostomata, Pisces, that is fish, Amphibia, which includes certain toads, frogs, etc. Then you have got reptiles, the first two terrestrial forms, which actually evolved from water or ocean to land, like, right, in terms of evolution they were the first creatures to evolve a terrestrial mode of life. So here comes reptiles. Then we have class apes, which includes all birds, both flightless and non-flightless. And finally, we have got us, that is mammalia. So presence of a mammary gland makes you classified under this class of mammalia. So all the mammals that you see around, dogs, cats, cattle, humans, bats, all of them are belonging to this class of mammalia. So now let us see one by one what are the non-chordates that are existing and the subkingdom non-chordates according to the 10 phyla of classification. So the first in this novel system of classification, in order to classify them, let us see certain basic attributes, right, based on which these phyla have been categorized. So here what you have is your coelom structure, your tissue grade organization, mode of feedings, mode of reproduction. So let us see them first, and then we will be coming back to these 10 phyla of non-chordates. So in grades of organization, you have got two major, that is cell grade and tissue grade of organization. And then there is one midpoint also, that is cell tissue grade. So here, as you can see in this first box, I have shown the image, space contrast image of a paramecium. So paramecium is a unicellular prokaryote. So it is a single cell, right? It does not have many cells. So a single cell has to do everything from feeding to reproduction to digestion of food and even what do we call it? The anal props or the modes of excretion of food are not very well organized. So a single cell will bear the mouth, it will bear the anal prop, because you cannot term it as an anus because it's a single cell. So this egestion of food also takes place in the same cell. Hence, there is cell grade of organization. So is paramecium the only example? No, you have got amoeba, you have got paramecium. There are so many organisms. All the unicellular protists form a part of this cell grade of organization. After this, you have got cell tissue grade, which is seen in certain cnidarians, that is jellyfish or Portuguese man of war. So what are these? These are mollusks. We will be seeing them in this. That is a major phyla in non-chordate classification of systems. So they do have a cell tissue grade classification, which means some part of their bodies will show tissue grade organization, some parts will show cell grade organization, right? The stinging cells, that are the nidophores, so they show cell grade organization, whereas the organism as a whole, if you see, it has got heart, it has got a lymphatic system, so that shows tissue grade organization. And then we have evolved forms like planarians or flatworms, which completely show tissue grade organization. So here, as you can see in planaria, you have the pharynx on the dorsal side, you have the gastrovascular cavity, you have the mouth, which is present on the bottom or the surface through which they crawl on the ventral side of the body, and you also have got the nerve cord present for sensory physiology of the organism that needs to be there. And after this grade of organization, let us see what is symmetry. Like, why is symmetry important in organisms? Have you ever heard of paramecium or amoeba or any of your teachers or anybody talking about symmetry in terms of unicellular organisms? No, because that's not important. That's not required. But whenever we see higher forms of organisms, body symmetry is an important aspect that we need to consider. So in body symmetry, you have got three major types, that is asymmetric, and in symmetric also you have got two types. One is bilateral symmetry and the other is radial symmetry. So in asymmetric organisms, the examples are all the protists, which are unicellular, paramecium, amoeba and certain sponges. And for radial symmetry, you have got sea stars, cucumbers, jellyfish, octopuses, etc., which show radial symmetry. Bilateral symmetry, all the mammals, apes are best examples of bilateral symmetry. So if I was to divide myself into two halves, my left and right would be exactly identical, right? So this is what is known as bilateral symmetry. Then coming to the coelom, right? The coelom structure or the coelom nature. Every organism, most of the organisms have got a cavity in their body. Cavity, as in, I don't mean to say it is a completely hollow space. There will be viscera around, but their body is divided into basically three germ layers. So depending on what germ organization it has, it is known as diploblastic, which means it has got only two layers, that is the ectoderm and the endoderm. Triploblastic animals have got the third middle layer, that is the mesoderm. So you have the outer ecto, meso and endoderm present. So this figure very beautifully shows you the cavity as well as the different germ layers that are present. So in the left half, you can see there is the endoderm and the ectoderm. So this is an example of a diploblastic organism. Triploblasts, like human beings, have got the ectoderm, the endoderm, and the mesoderm as well. Whenever you do this in your exams, please show the arrowheads very carefully. Don't mix up or don't jinx them, because this will end you up losing marks. So whenever you say endoderm, make sure that the arrow ray directs from the innermost layer. When it is mesoderm, it has to be the middle layer. When it is the ectoderm, it has to be the outer layer. Now let's come to body cavity, that is coelom, the coelom structure. So eucoelom, that is two coelomic animals, are annelids. Annelids, a difficult term? Not really. Annelids, best example is earthworms that you see. In Marathi we call them gandu, right? So annelids are truly coelomic, so they have a body cavity. Then you have pseudocoelomic animals or pseudocoelom containing organisms such as Aschelminthis. So these are parasitic worms which are there present in your tummy if you're not dewormed. They're present in dogs and cats because they eat outside food, usually stray animals. Even if you have got pets, you need to deworm them every 6 months because they do harbor certain parasites. So this is an example of Aschelmin worms which have got a pseudocoelom. And then you have got acoelomic animals which do not have a coelom. The examples of which are cnidarians, that is jellyfish, porifera, and platyhelminthes like planaria or flatworms. So here is shown the structure of a coelom. So you see eucoelomates. This is an earthworm. So this has the coelom in between. So this is a empty cavity, right? It is actually empty. So it will be filled with visceral fluids. It is not like that it is a completely patch of hollow air, or in certain cases there might be air sacs present as well. But just understand the gist. Eucoelomic animal, the example is earthworm. Then comes pseudocoelomates, which have a falsified coelom organization. So here you have the endoderm and then there is a pseudocoelom. So between the endo and the mesoderm there will be a space, right? The ecto and the mesoderm will be adhered together. So these are example of pseudocoelomic animals. As I said, the example is your parasitic worms or Aschelminthis. And then you have got acoelomates, which do not have any cavity in between. So they have complete uniform grades of germ layers, that is endo, meso, and ectoderm. Best example is your planaria, right? So now, summing it up, classification has always been according to different attributes. So if you say classification according to kingdom, Animalia, it includes like lakhs of species. Everybody would be put there. Then slowly and steadily we start, narrowing down in terms of body organization, the symmetry, the body cavity, and phyla, which tends to add up this list to many classes and phyla. So the first is kingdom Animalia, which includes multicellular organisms without a cell wall, right? So it does include unicellular as well, protists, right? Then body organization, cell grade, tissue grade. Tissue grade will have maximum classification due to obvious reasons. So let us see the first half. So in cell grade, the body symmetry is asymmetric. As I told you, amoeba, paramecium, they are never symmetric organisms. They are acoelomate. That is out of question. It is a single cell. There are no germ layers. There is no coelom. So they are acoelomic in nature. The example for this is one phyla, that is phylum Porifera. Then when it comes to tissue organ or organ system grade of classification, we have got two major types of symmetry, as I told you, in terms of body symmetry, that is radial and bilateral. So radial symmetry is again shown by acoelomic animals. Examples are cnidarians, right? And then for bilateral symmetry, you have these three coelom organizations showing categories, that is both acoelomic, eucoelomic, that is true coelom, and pseudocoelomic, right? Like Aschelminthis. So they are further divided into respective phyla. So for acoelomates, you have Platyhelminthes, right? There is no coelom, planaria. Always remember the example. Pseudocoelom, Aschelminthis, eucoelomate, that they have got a true coelom. It includes many organisms, including annelids, arthropods, mollusks, echinoderms, hemichordates, and chordata class. Right? The trick to remembering this classification chapter is always remember one representative species from each phyla, which is going to greatly ease your understanding. Why am I telling you this? Is even if you forget the classification or even if you forget the characteristics, looking at the organism or memorizing the organism, you will be able to write its characteristics. I'll give an example. We have not even progressed, but still I'll quote it. If I say pigeon, what comes to your mind? It is a bird. It has got wings. It has got an exoskeleton made up of feathers. Next, I say toad. You will say, so this is a slightly lower form in evolution. It is not completely adapted to terrestrial mode, but it is both aquatic and terrestrial. It shows metamorphosis. It has got larval stages, then it has got an adult stage. Neck is absent. Exoskeleton is absent. So, right? So, only remembering certain keystone species or representative species will help you understand the entire phyla and write down the characteristics for your short notes or brief answers. So with this, let us begin with the first phyla of your non-chordates, that is Porifera. So what are Poriferans? They bear numerous pores in their body which are known as oscula, or they are also known as ostia, and most of them are aquatic forms, freshwater and saltwater as well, and they have a asymmetric body pattern. After that, they have got a characteristic feature which makes them distinct. They bear collar cells. What are collar cells? Are they collars of my coat that you are seeing? No. These cells come with special functions. So forget about the functions, because remembering this is more than enough for you. If you are curious enough, you can read about it. So these animals are always attached to a substratum, which might be a rock or a carapace or the exoskeleton of some animal. So they need some substratum to attach, right? And they do not have the power of locomotion. So whenever they are attached, they are sedentary. They will stay stable over there till their entire lifetime. Hence, they are also known as sedentary animals. Then their spongy bodies are supported by spicules or spongin fibers. So they are made up of silica or silicates of carbon, as it is called. So calcium carbonate, CaCO3 and silica. So a mixture of them makes this external covering very hard, almost like a coral, right? These animals are usually very small, microscopic or inconspicuous, and they are found feeding through their entire body cavity. That is, water is ingested through the rostria and is given out through oscula. So whatever are the food particles, whatever is ingestible is absorbed through water itself. They do not have a very well organized mouth or mouth parts. And these animals, obviously, since they still show uh, you know uh, uh, this cell or cell tissue grade of organization, they reproduce by budding, and a asexual or sexual mode of reproduction as well, because they do show different gametes on certain occasions as in it differs from species to species. So they show both a asexual and a sexual mode of reproduction. And see, this is a characteristic feature as we go on going higher from in the classification strata. Usually the power of regeneration is lost. So since they are still at the very basal level, they have a good power of regeneration. Examples are your sponge scion, euspongia, that is bath sponge, and other examples that have been given in your textbook. So next is your phylum Coelenterata. So what are coelentrates? They are also known as cnidarians. They have a coelom, right? So the body of these animals is cylindrical or umbrella-like, right? And usually they have got this stage which is known as a polyp stage. They also have got a larval stage earlier in the development, and there is a polyp stage which is a full-grown adult. So this adult is known as a polyp, and the umbrella-like structure is known as the medusa. So here you see in this figure, we see this hydra that is there. So with the base, it has been attached to a substratum. This is the female reproductive part. This is the new bud. So even on the same organism, on the same individual, you can have it reproducing through both the modes, that is sexual and asexual. So budding means it's reproducing asexually. And you have these testes, mouth parts, and tentacles, which are utilized for closing in water, closing in food to the mouth parts. So most of these animals are marine. Most of them, they are marine, and only few of them are freshwater. Body of these animals is radially symmetrical. I have already told you what is radial symmetry, and they are diploblastic, which means they will have two layers. Tell me which ones, the endo and the ectoderm. The mesoderm is not there. So they are diploblastic. Then they have got these nidoblast or nidoblast, as you want to call it. bearing tentacles that are present near the mouth parts. So basically, they are useful for capturing prey, and they do inject certain toxins which paralyze their prey, and this is how they prey on zooplankton or phytoplankton that are microscopic creatures. So best example is Hydra. Hydra is very well researched in terms of regeneration because it has got a huge regeneration potential. Hydra is the best example to remember. You have got sea anemone, you have got, Cisalia, that is Portuguese man of war, then you have got Aurelia, jellyfish. So all of these are cnidarians. Always remember anything that has got stinging cells mostly will be in cnidaria. Jellyfish, you have got so many species of them, right? Portuguese man of war is again a type of jellyfish or a type of mollusk to be precise. So all of them have got toxins, right? And there is no antidote. If you get stung multiple times, and you do get, okay, it's not like one mouth part that comes and blinks to you. If jellyfish catches hold of you, there are many nidoblasts present on the tentacles of these organisms. So you get multiple stings, right? So you should never handle a jellyfish barehanded. And in certain beaches also, that is why it is recommended that you do not go barefoot. Next, coming to class of platyhelminths or flatworms. As the name suggests, they are leaf-like or strip-like, hence the name flatworms. They are usually endoparasites, and some of them, like planaria, are free-living aquatic forms as well. Their body is bilaterally symmetrical, as you can see in the figure. And they have got three germ layers, that is endo, ecto, meso, and they are hermaphrodites. That is, they are the male and female reproductive parts are present on the same organism, right? So planaria is an example of that. Tapeworm. Tapeworms are usually found as endoparasites in cows and other forms of cattle. Examples are tapeworm, liver fluke, and planaria. Then let's come to this class of Astrihelminthes. So these are endoparasites, roundworms. First we study flatworms. Now we study roundworms, right? So roundworms, they are usually endoparasites. Free living animals are either aquatic or terrestrial, right? But most of them are endoparasites. Then they have a triploblastic germ layer organization, and they are pseudocoelomic, which means they have a falsified pseudom. So this cavity that is present is, a falsified cavity. So they will have the ectoderm, and then they will have the mesoderm that is attached to the ectoderm itself, and then in between you will have, like an axil, the endoderm. Then the body of these organisms is non-segmented and is covered with a cuticle. What is cuticle? It is, in layman terms, just to understand, the skin or the outer covering of that organism. And these organisms are usually unisexual, that is, they show sexual dimorphism. So the male and female are different. Example, Ascaris, I told you, intestinal worm, filarial worm, and also the lavla or the eyeworm, right? So filariasis is a disease caused by it, right? So it is also an example of Astrihelminthes. Filaria is incurable, right? Whenever you get infections, usually it results into certain, very deadly diseases like elephantiasis, which to date have not been completely cured. So you should, and they are vector borne, so you should be extra cautious, right? Then coming to this phyla of annelids, they show a cylindrical long body which is metamerically segmented, right? So what is meant by metamerically segmented? So from the head to their anal opening, or from the head to tail, they will bear rings, right? Ring-like structures. It doesn't mean that they're actually rings and just put together, but they have, these physical ring-like structures. Hence, it is known as their body is metamerically segmented. And many of them are free living, but some are ectoparasites as well. Again, they are found in all forms, as in they have been adapted to the aquatic form of life. They have been adapted to the terrestrial form as well. So annelids, earthworm, as you see, it can stay in moist land. It can also stay in your compost pits. Your compost pits are not soggy, right? They are still terrestrial, so they can survive there as well. These animals are triploblastic, so three germ layers they show bilateral symmetry, and they have eucoelomic, that is, they show a true coelom mode or nature of organization with the endoderm, the mesoderm, and the ectoderm, right? There is no cavity in between. So their body is again covered with a cuticle, and these animals are unisexual or hermaphrodites, right? Then coming to the next class, that is arthropods. Since what is meant by arthropoda, I will just break down the word for you. So poda meaning feet and arthros meaning joint. So whenever you have got jointed appendages, it is known as arthropodal. It is known as an arthropodal organism. So these animals have got joint feet or appendages, hence the name arthropoda. So this is the largest phyla existing on earth, and they are found from literally the equator up till the poles, right? Huge number of species, many undiscovered yet not named. So all the insects and creepy crawlies that you see around are arthropods, right? And they have very successfully, conquered almost all the habitats, right from the snow-clad mountains up till the equator and the beaches as well. So these animals are, as I said, found in all the habitats. That is the third point, from oceans to the highest mountains. Their body is eucoelomic, bilaterally symmetrical, segmented, and triploblastic, which means they also show the triple blast or the germ layers of development. Then their body is covered in a chitinous exoskeleton. Chitin, whatever you want to call it as. So chitinous exoskeleton is present around their body. So whenever, I'm sure you must have killed or groomed cockroaches in your home if you have had them. So you see, it's very difficult to crush the cockroach, right? Because their body is covered in a strong cuticle, right? So this cuticle is not normal skin; it is a very hard exoskeleton made up of chitin. Chitin is very difficult to otherwise break down biologically as well, right? So crabs also do contain chitin. That is why people who are seafood fans, you remove the carapace of the crab, right? The edible part is in between. You have to remove the exoskeleton. These animals are unisexual. They show dimorphism. Male and females are different. So this, even without teaching, I'm sure you could, right? Any insect is an arthropod. Most of them are butterflies, honeybees, crabs, spiders, horseshoe crabs, whatnot, millipedes. All of them are arthropods. Coming to mollusks, so after arthropods, they are the second largest phyla, right? Their bodies are very soft and slimy. You must have seen snail, you must have seen slugs. In the rainy season when your school begins, you see those black colored slugs, right? They're not snails, they're slugs which move very slowly, and then if you disturb them, they'll just quench themselves. They'll reduce their body volume to as low and as less as possible. So they are very smooth, right, to touch. So slime secretion is a speciality of them. They do secrete slime, and they are very soft. Hence, they are also known as, that is why the name mollusk or the phylum Mollusca. And these animals are aquatic or terrestrial, both, but most of them prefer marine or aquatic habitats, and their body is triploblastic, eucoelomic, right? And except for organisms like the snail, most of them are bilaterally symmetrical. Octopuses are radially symmetrical. Their body is divided into three divisions, like the head, foot, and the viscera or the visceral mass. The visceral mass is covered with a mantle. Now, this mantle is what? It is again a calcium carbonate or a very hard exoskeleton made up of uh, carbonates of carbon, and it is external in case of cone snails. Cone snails is what you collect on the beach, right? Or the normal snail which bears its shell. But in case of octopi, it is internal. So this can be internal and external as well. And these animals are also unisexual. Example is bivalves, snails, octopuses, etc. Right? Then you have echinoderms. What are echinoderms? So again, echinoderms are these organisms like the sea star or the sea urchin, which have got these very hard to touch, calcareous spines or calciferous spines present all over their body to protect them from predators. So these animals are found only in the ocean, right? No confusion, not in the fresh water. They will always be found in marine waters. So their body is triploblastic, eucoelomic, and they show radial symmetry. Obviously, a sea star cannot be bilaterally symmetrical, and but bilateral symmetry is present in lower forms of their development or in the earlier stages of development when they are in the larval stages, similar to a jellyfish. So they perform locomotion with the help of tube feet, right? So they move around with tube feet. There are certain interesting videos which you might Google out on YouTube if you are interested in how they exactly locomote. So tube feet is a characteristic feature of this phyla, that is Echinodermata. They have, as I said, the exoskeleton made up of calciferous spines, and they also have got a pretty good ability of regeneration. So if you pinch off an arm from a starfish, it can still regrow it. Now whether the arm can regenerate an organism is questionable. It depends on how much central portion you are acquiring, but mostly the organism as a whole will develop the lost arm. Also, if you divide the organism into two halves, then there is a possibility that the entire second halves are generated. So these organisms are again mostly unisexual, though some of them may be hermaphrodites or bisexual as well. Coming to the next and the last class of non-chordates, we have got hemichordates. Also, these are known as the connecting links or sometimes missing links in the animal world. Why? Let us see. The example is balanoglossus and shacoglossus. So they have a collar-like bone, as you can see here below the proboscis. So this is the proboscis, and here you have the collar-like bone. And then there is this trunk region or the main body stage that you have. So these animals have got these three subtypes, their body division, that is proboscis, collar and the trunk. The notochord is present in the proboscis region only, and hence they are known as hemichordates. So only this proboscis region will have the notochord, which makes them similar to chordates, but their entire body length is not covered in the notochord. So these worms are also known as aconworms. What all worms did we see till date so far? We saw flatworms, platyhelminthes, then we saw roundworms, which are aschelminthes. So now this is a again different type of worm known as aconworms, which are hemichordates. Right? These are again marine mammals and live in burrows in the sand. They have one to many pharyngeal gill slits for respiration. Since they are aquatic, they will obviously have gills, right? They cannot breathe with nostrils like us. And they are unisexual, and some of them may be hermaphrodite as well. So now with this, we come to an end of the non-chordate system of classification. Now let us begin with what are chordates. So chordates, as the name suggests, I have put out a page acquired adapted from Google, which will help you understand what this chordates or this phylum chordata is. So notochord is present at least at some stage during the development. Then the pharyngeal glands are present in the body at some stage. So usually this is during the embryonic stages, with the higher forms that evolve. When they become terrestrial, fully living, they are gone. They bear lungs for respiration. Single tubular spinal cord is present on the dorsal side. What is the dorsal side? The back, right? This is the ventral side. This is the dorsal side. Heart is present on the ventral side. Again, a characteristic feature. So lions, salamanders, sharks, lamprey, tigers, snakes are all example of chordates. So now let us see their classification further with these two subphyla. So the first subphyla is of urochordates, also known as tunicates, since their body is covered in a skin like test or tunic. The larval stages of these animals are free swimming animals, and notochord is present only in the tail region of the larvae. Hence, they are called as urochordates. So now you see it is so critical to classify. We saw balanoglossus, which was a hemichordate, because even in the adult mature stage, it still has the notochord in the proboscis region. Urochordates, they have it only in the larval stages, but then that is a similarity bears a similarity with chordates. So they are grouped into a different phyla altogether, that is urochordates. So larval stages metamorphose into adults after settling down to the bottom of the sea, right? And so again, they also need some substratum to attach. Generally, these animals are bisexual or hermaphrodites. Examples are Herdmania and Doliolum, right? So here you see you have this bronchial aperture for respiration, the atrial aperture for the circulatory system to be in place, the tunic, that is the body, the skin like covering that is there, which is also known as a test, and the body along with the foot, right? So these animals are also known as tunicates. Then we have this subphylum of Cephalochordata. Let us see the diagram first, so your description would be more easy. So you see this is almost a completely well-developed organism with the dorsal side showing presence of the nerve cord, the notochord, right, and the segmented muscles. The ventral side or the lateral side actually bears the gill slits or the pharyngeal gill slits for respiration. You have the liver, intestine, gonads, and anus. So this is a organ grade level of organization. So now we are moving higher. you realize that from unicellular protists we are moving higher in terms of organization, in terms of the blasty of the organism. Most of them are triploblastic, they are acoelomic, they are showing not cell or cell tissue, but they are showing organ grade of organization, so on and so forth. So these are small fish-like marine mammals, marine animals. Notochord is present throughout the body length, an important feature of these organisms. And example is Amphioxus, right? So these animals are unisexual. So male and female organisms are essentially different. Then coming to the other subphyla of vertebrates or craniata, they are further divided into six classes, right? So what is so special about them? They have the notochord, which is replaced by a vertebral column, or in simple words, spine. All of us have got a spine, right? So that is what? That is your vertebral column. Then these animals are comparatively evolved in terms of their thinking abilities. So we say that the head is well developed. Brain is protected by a cranium or the skull. Endoskeleton is either cartilaginous or bony, and some chordates are jawless, that is agnatha, right? Where and some are present with jaw, that is gnathostomata, that is sharks. So the six classes are cyclostomata, Pisces, amphibians, reptilia, apes, and mammals. So let us see all of them one by one. So the first class of cyclostomes, examples are, this petromyzon and myxine. So here you see they have an eye, this sucker like mouth organ, which is modified for attaching itself onto the host and also sucking in food. You have the gills, you have the body, and you have these tail fins. So best examples are like lamprey. So these are jawless fish or jawless animals. A mouth is provided with a sucker, as I told you, for attachment to the host or a substrate. Their skin is soft and without any scales. Paired appendages are present, and the endoskeleton is cartilaginous. It's not bony. So most of them are ectoparasites, as I said. So petromyzon, myxine, lamprey are examples of cyclostomes. Then here we come with the class Pisces, which all of us are aware of. So here you see again the dorsal side has the dorsal fin, it has got the spinal cord, the eye, the caudal fin. On the ventral side you have got the ventral fin, the pelvic fin, pectoral fins on the lateral ventral side, the gill slits for respiration. So these are poikilotherms, that is cold-blooded animals. They cannot regulate their body temperature, so usually they move up and down the breadths of the ocean, the height of the ocean to regulate the body temperature, and on certain occasions they also undertake migrations, right, within the sea. That is why you have this catch that the fishermen have, because they catch the fish usually during spawning, that is when they breed or when they migrate from one place to the other. So their body is spindle shaped to minimize water resistance because they have to locomote in water. Then they have paired or unpaired fins. So the dorsal fin, for example, is unpaired, but the pelvic and ventral fins could be paired. Pectoral fins usually by default are paired. Then the exoskeleton is a form of scales in fish, smaller fish. Sharks do not have scales. They have got a cartilaginous or bony exoskeleton, which is in sharks it's cartilaginous. In fish that you consume like rohu, katla, etc., it is scaly, right? You have to remove the scales. Respiration occurs through gills. Examples are rohu, pomfret, seahorse, shark, stingrays, and whatnot, right? So the list is again pretty big. Then coming to the second class of chordates, we have amphibians. So amphibians are the class from which evolution is said to have started evolving towards the terrestrial mode. That is, they started hopping on land. See, they don't completely walk like us. Neither do they swim. So they have an in-between mode wherein they're comfortable both on land and on water as well. So they are strictly aquatic in their larval stages. You have seen tadpoles, you remove them, they'll die because they've got gills. They cannot breathe aerially. But the adult forms or the completely well developed forms, the sexually mature forms, can perform well both on land and water. So during the adult stage, they can perform aerial respiration. Then they do not have, they do have two pairs of appendages. Digits are without claws. So there is, in this frog or toad, you can see there is a forearm and there is a hind leg or a hind arm, that is a leg, which is useful for jumping. Then you have this trunk, the tympanum, that is the external ears are absent, but tympanum helps them to sense vibrations. So they do not hear like us because you cannot visibly see them bearing ears, but the tympanum functions very similar to the ear. You have the mouth parts, the nares, and the soft skin. So at times they also breathe through the skin. That is why the skin is maintained soft. It is they keep on frequently jumping between water and land. It cannot be completely dry. Frogs are usually will prefer having a moist skin. Toads usually can survive in dry climates as well. So the exoskeleton is absent and skin is without any derivative or any secretion usually. So they usually keep it moist for respiration. Then neck is absent, a characteristic feature of amphibians, and eyes are prominent with eyelids. So they do, excuse me, so they do open and shut their eyes. Examples are toad, frog, salamander, newts, for example, as well. Then coming to reptilia, as I said, in the course of evolution, they are the first two terrestrial forms that evolved with a creeping movement. That is why whenever you see NGC Wild, Animal Planet, or Discovery, they'll always say that crocodilians are millions of years old. They are so many years old. They evolved in this era, they evolved in that era. They have been existing since the age of dinosaurs. Why do they say this? Because they were actually, the reason is this first point. They were the first ones to evolve from water to land, right? That is why even in the prehistoric era, you have got crocodilian-like organisms present. Again, they are poikilotherms, which means they are cold-blooded. That is why you see crocodiles, gharials basking in the sun to heat them up. When they are overheated, they go to water to cool themselves down, right? So they keep on shuffling between water and land to regulate their body temperature. They creep on land, right? Because their bodies cannot be completely lifted up. And their skin is usually dry and scaly. The neck is present between the head and trunk. The external ear is absent again. And digits are provided with claws. Examples: tortoise, lizards, snakes, etc. Right? All of these are examples of reptiles. Then you have got class aves. So aves are the vertebrates which completely evolved to the aerial mode of living or the aerial mode of life. So they are warm-blooded, which means they are homeotherms. They can regulate their body temperature by themselves. They do not depend on external factors, right? And their body is usually spindle-shaped to like Pisces to minimize aerial resistance. In fish, you have got water resistance. In aves, you have got aerial resistance, right? And then of course there are many sub modifications depending on whether it is a predatory bird or whether it is a prey bird. So birds that prey on pigeons, falcons, eagles, ospreys, so their bodies are even more streamlined, right? They come with special modifications. Then their bodies then they also have got forelimbs which are modified into wings. So this is a major evolution. That is why all of the organisms who have their forelimbs modified into wings are considered as apes, right? Digits are covered with scales and usually bear claws. So you have got claws, very important in birds of prey because you need to claw on the prey. Fish, eagle, ospreys, hunt for fish. You need to actually claw down the organism, right? Organism as in the fish, the prey, because otherwise it will escape. It is already slimy, it has got scales. So if you don't pierce in or if you don't have a good grip, the prey is going to escape. Neck is present, obviously. Jaws are modified into beak, another modification of this class. So this includes, as I said, all the birds, both flightless like ostrich, kiwi, penguins, and all the flight birds that you see around, right? Then coming to this last class of mammals or mammalia. As I said, they typically bear the presence of mammary glands which produce milk. The secretion that is produced is known as milk. All of you know it. So this makes this group of organisms different and distinct from others. So whenever they are born, they are nursed by their mothers on the milk until they start eating other foods, right? Like plants or animals, whatever their mode of nutrition is. So they are warm blooded, that is, they can regulate their body temperature. and their bodies are usually divided again into the head, neck, and the trunk and the tail region in certain organisms like lions, hyenas, etc. Right? We don't have a tail, but we have the initial three divisions present. And digits are provided with nails, claws, or hoofs. So usually herbivores will bear hoofs, right? And the omnivores or carnivorous animals like tigers, leopards, hyenas, they will have claws and nails. So the exoskeleton is in the form of hair or fur. So hair for humans, other mammals, right? And it is fur in case of certain other animals which stay in the Arctic. Or it could be not, you need not go only to the Arctic or cold temperate zones to stay. Dogs, cats also do have a fur, right? Though they live along with us. So usually it is normal hair, sparse body hair, or it is complete, a coating of hair that is present, which we term as fur. And the examples are elephant, humans, kangaroo, dolphins, etc. Right? So for dolphins and all, the exoskeleton will be skin itself, right? They neither have hair nor have fur. So again, there is a great diversity in mammalia, right from the organisms inhabiting the poles, that is your polar bears, your whales, which live in the oceans, your dolphins, to be humans and even bats, which have this patagium, which is not a wing, but the forelimbs are such modified that they can sustain flight and they can voluntarily, actively, and passively go on flight. So this was all about mammalia, the six classes of chordates. In this chapter, we have studied what is the need to classify, the historical methods of classification, the new method or the novel method of classification, and it goes unsaid the need for it. So I think with this you will be able to better write answers and understand for yourself why do we need to study this chapter and why has it been included in your syllabus. So with this video, goodbye. See you next time.